Good evening, everybody. We'll just start. It's 7 o'clock. I'm Councillor Hoden Haley, your chair for this evening, and warm welcome to all the members of the scrutiny panel today and those who are participating online. Would you like to say a few words, Councillor?
Only just to introduce myself. My name is Councillor Jonathan Oxley, representing Hanger Hill, and it's a pleasure to be on this committee. And I have to say, this is my first scrutiny panel ever, so bear with me if I don't always get the protocol right.
Congratulations. As your chair, today we'll be reviewing key issues on the panel operation from 2025 to 2026. We're also going to be looking at the offset inspections of children's services, which will give us progress update on children's need of help and protection. And we will also look at children's social care self-evaluation for 2024 and 2025. I encourage everyone to contribute openly, and so we can make a meaningful difference in the lives of those who we represent. And thank you for your dedication to the Children's Services panel and the important work that it does. Quick housekeeping, if all attendees able to speak through the chair one at a time, that would be great. Do you want to come in, Cornelia? Oh, sorry. There were no apologies that was reported, and there's no urgent matter that was reported as well. And there's no matters to be considered in private. Is there any declaration of interest before we start? No? Thank you. And can we all approve of the minutes of the meeting that was held on 14th of January 2025? Councillor Crawford.
Firstly, I'd like to say I'm a carer, and my son has physical disability, is out and about on public transport, which is lethal for him, but we applaud him wanting to be independent. So I'm keeping my mobile on, and I'll get out quick if he phones. The other thing what I wanted to say, I think the minutes are excellent, but what to me is missing is that the councillors, the scrutiny by councillors is not evident. It's in the responses of officers and the chair, whom I thought was responded very well. But I would personally would like some record of the questions that I and my fellow councillors ask, because we do put a lot of work in it. And I think for anyone reading it, they hopefully they would want to see the kind of questions that thoughtful questions that councillors are asking. But I mean, maybe somewhere it's in there, but I can't see it. Just a note for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Crawford. Councillor Cudder.
Yes, Councillor Crawford. I have noticed also previously in minutes, I think somehow, although we are not sure whether there is a change or what happened, so I think there is a change. I think we need some clarification on this. I think they are not stating anybody's names or who asked to what question. I think generalizing in minutes taking, that's what I have noticed. Yeah, I don't have another comments.
Okay, well, let Cornelia come in and answer this. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. Yes, it's a policy we've had within our team now to make the minutes more concise, and therefore we're omitting the questions asked because they can kind of be implied by the officers' responses.
So, I don't think that's acceptable. I think that if a councillor, really reads and wants to ask a question, that's what we're here for. And it doesn't take much longer. We have excellent, officers, taking notes. But it's the cabinet member all the time, and said I think he responded very well. But if you're going to mention a cabinet member, then I think, okay, some officers don't actually mention the council by name. All I'm asking is that the questions are there, which are usually, you know, quite brief. It's recognized. We need to recognise that this is scrutiny, and it's an important role. So may I make a recommendation that on this committee we would like it the minutes to to document the questions. Not all of them, maybe. Well, but doing it succinctly. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go away and I'll take this, and then I'll come back to you. But we are writing down her recommendation, aren't we? We will definitely write down the recommendations. Thank you so much, Councillor Crawford. Councillor Dear.
Just want to add only one point before we go for recommendations. I think we need some clarification on this change. If we can ask Sam Bailey or someone where the changes are coming from. So I think we need a little bit more clarification before we recommend such issue. Thank you.
I'll speak to Sam Bailey, and then I will definitely get back to the panel.
Check.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and I'm not even sure it's a matter for Sam Bailey. I think it's for us. I mean, we're being asked to approve the minutes, and I think if you're saying, and I obviously wasn't at the meeting, that it's not properly documenting who asked questions and giving a sort of an unfortunate sort of glance to it, it seems to me that that's us saying that we don't approve the minutes, and the minutes are not acceptable for a scrutiny panel. So I'm personally not sure that it requires any intervention from Sam Bailey, but that's up to other members whether you. It's the members, yeah.
I agree with your point, and with also Councillor Crawford. I think we don't know where the change, when this change has come from, who has implemented. We don't know about it. That's why I also need some clarification. That's what I'm saying here.
I completely understand all of your points here, but I think the scrutiny panel, not just for the panel that we're doing this evening, I think overall the scrutiny, it has changed. And as you know, Sam Bailey has been emailing. What I will do is, as a chair, I will go away, I'll think about this, and I'll definitely get back to the members on here, and not only to speak to Sam Bailey, but as a chair, and I'll think about it, and then I'll come back to you all.
The only other way that we can do this, Chair, is if we actually specify before we speak, I would like it this minuted. And that seems, you know, a bit extreme. But if we make that request, so I am making a request this evening. If I ask a question and, you know, I haven't got any major, you know, questions going to upset anyone, I would like it minuted. Else, what on earth is the point of a councillor being here? And I'm only interested in this scrutiny meeting. It's not for me to speak about how other chairs do, you know, run their committees. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we start, I go. Yeah, Cornelia, come in.
Sorry, just on the minutes, it's not just for this scrutiny panel that we've been asked to cut that out. It's for across the board with different committees.
I appreciate that, but what I'm saying is if I'm going to ask a question, and I remember the last meeting spending an awful long time thinking about questions, and I have a speech impediment. Sometimes I can open my mouth and gobbledygook comes out. I can't speak. So I have to really, you know, be very thoughtful and prepare. And I want to know, I want my questions there, some idea of my questions there. This is the backbenchers scrutiny meeting. Not your, my apologies, it's personally, nobody else's. And I appreciate the chair was not in this, you know, this meeting, but I've also noticed, obviously, different officers do, report the minutes in different ways, but we want the questions to be evident in future. Otherwise, I ain't going to ask any questions. I'll just sit here and smile and nod. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So now that we all agreed on the minutes, and thank you for your accommodation.
Excuse me, Chair. So are the minutes agreed or are they not agreed? Just for
Yeah,
I was gonna
can we all clarify if the minutes are all agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agreed. Thank you so much. We also have the our two officers for this evening, Robert South, who's the Director of Children's Services, and Joanne Dempster, who is the Assistant Director of Children's Social Care. Cornelia, do you want to comment on your panel operation? Thank you.
Yes, good evening, everyone. So this panel operations report is just to ask the panel to agree its terms of reference, to agree the outline work program, and to agree the co-option and external engagement arrangements. These are all contained in various appendices to the report, and they should govern the panel's work for the 2025-2026 municipal year. So it's just for your attention. Yes, please, if you
Do we all agree?
I just had a really question of information, really. So the co-opted members and experts that we can bring in, are there any at the moment, or are we starting afresh?
Yes, so
We
we are starting afresh. We have sent out emails seeking nominations for members for the sorry, let me just find it. The parent governor members, the religious members from the Church of England and from the Catholic Diocese. We have sent out emails seeking nominations, but so far we have had some interest, but we're still clarifying matters.
We just had a follow-up question. That being the case, we haven't finished that process, and we're not trying to make the meeting shorter or anything, but why do we have sort of very substantive items on the agenda when those members have not arrived yet or have not been appointed? We haven't gone through the process
Yes,
of
but for
recruiting them.
those members for the education, for the parent governor representative, the Church of England representative, and the Catholic Diocese representative are really here to consider education matters. They can be present in the meetings discussing other items, but they're more crucial for the education matters, and we are hoping that they will be in place by the meetings in November and February when education matters will be considered.
Councillor Crawford.
I have to add to that. A good point. If we're looking at children's services and education, have you actually made contact to get a representative from one of the support groups that support parents through transition or that paperwork, bureaucracy, when their child with a send child? Have you asked, have you been in touch with any?
So, Councillor, when I chaired my first year of scrutiny, it was same as children's services. So each theme that we look at, based on that, I would invite parents and carers and families based on the theme that we were looking at. So previously we did had parent from the SEND community who were interested to talk about and had concerns and issues. And I will still run the same way. If there are parents who show an interest, who want to come on the of the committee and will ask questions, we would allow that. They are they're still invited, and they normally contact directly.
I'll send that
Bye.
in my community hub. There was a session today, I gather, with a group carers and parents, and some of those parents were actually ex-teachers who were running the sessions, so they have a great understanding of special needs, working social services, and I think that would be quite beneficial to the work that we do. I also think it's really interesting. It is really a good idea to refresh, to have different people, not the same people all the time. But there may be someone from MenCap. May I find out if there is anyone from that group, because I'm afraid I don't know them well, who would be interested in coming on, on board? Do I write to you, Chair, or?
Yes, I think you can do it through Democratic Services. However, the panel is free to co-opt different people throughout the year as it deems appropriate to the items to be considered as a particular meeting. However, regarding the education representatives that I was specifically talking about, a representative from the Church of England, from the Catholic Diocese, and the 3 parent governor representatives, they have to be from those categories, and there's a formal process for seeking nominations for those vacancies, or for those co-optees, I should say.
And you've had no responses yet?
We've had no response for the religious ones, but we have had for the parent governor representatives.
Okay, so with your patience, so I'm keen to have representation from people, who are giving support to their contemporaries, to parents, and I do think it's quite important, not for us to choose when they can turn up, but to use their experience for all, right across, because if you've got a child with special needs, often they're working with social services, they're doing the education health plans and whatever. Anyway, outside this, I will see if I can think of someone.
I was just wondering, Robert, whether you and your colleagues had any suggestions of people that you work with in the community, or whether you wanted to give some thought to that, who might be good people to have on the committee.
Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, yes, thank you, and thank you, councillors. I think there's a couple of things to maybe just consider. So we do have a number of individuals who are considering. So there's a list. There are a number of community champions and also respective leaders in parent carer forums who are already involved in the partnerships. So they actually work with us on a partnership basis. Now, whether they're part of the partnership delivering SEND, for instance, which is a really good point, it is not only the responsibility of the local authority to deliver SEND, it is a partnership with health, obviously with education where there is some independence through academisation, etc. But I think within the terms of reference, I think it's helpful to have other eyes on challenges that we face. We know that many of the challenges that we face at the moment have a local flavour, but they're reflective of a national challenge, wider challenge. So I think it's helpful. I think it's important also just to remember, and this is something that I saw you do at the beginning of today's meeting in terms of those declaration of interest. I think that is really important in certain areas, so we know the perspective that someone's bringing into the meeting. But in my experience in other boroughs I've worked in, we have done that. We've made good use of it, and I think we have here as well in Ealing.
Thank you, Robert. Should we move on to the panel work programme? Do anyone have any questions or comment that they would like to make regarding the work programme for this year? I sincerely apologise, but going back to the declaration of interest, I forgot my role that I play. I work in children's services for Hammersmith and Council Borough. I should have mentioned that a lot earlier. I apologise. Any comments or questions regarding the work? Oh, were you Councillor? No, Councillor Crawford.
I'm quite keen. It's early days, but I'm quite keen to see how the changes in our school transport have sort of, settled down, and whether, what savings we've made. It's a really important area where we want to deliver a service to the right where there is a need, but at the same time we have to look at the budget. Many people are doing it, so I would welcome having a report, because I think we talked about this came to the children's panel earlier in the year, so it would probably be around about Christmas. I mean, you've got to give plenty of time, but I think it would just be sort of review if you think that's acceptable.
So I'm sure we can take that away and have a look at that as within the current programme of works, and I'm sure that's something I can discuss with the chair.
Thank you so much. Any comments?
Yeah. And I don't want to be political about this. Children's centres closed. It seems like quite an important thing that's happening in the children's services area. And now we discussed, Robert, in the past about the outreach implementation that you're planning. I was going to come back to the Family First Partnership Programme, which I think relates to this. I personally would like to see something on the agenda for this year which shows where we are with developing the outreach implementation programme, where we're at. Maybe it comes under this FFPP programme. I don't know if other members feel the same.
Coming on October 2025. Is the early help implementation that we'll be looking at? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming.
I'll withdraw my
and children's centres are coming as well.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, hold tight.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we're going to go into item 7, which will be looking at the Ofsted inspection of children's services.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I think it's. I'll just say a few words before I hand over to Joanne Dempster, who is she's our Assistant Director for Children's Social Care, but in that role, she also acts as our practice leader. And the role of practice leader is an incredibly important role in every local authority for an individual to develop the way in which we engage with and work with children, young people and families, and ensuring that we're using an evidence-based approach to do that, that we are developing our workforce in a way that meets the needs of our specific local communities. And in order to do that, the practice leader and the system needs to understand more widely what is the lived experience of the children, the young people, the families who we serve, and understand that through the data, but also understand that through our qualitative feedback and auditing, quality assurance processes, etc. So Joanne has a huge responsibility working with me as the statutory director responsible for those areas. And back in April last year, we had a inspection which was conducted by the regulator in this area, Ofsted, which is known as the Inspection of Local Authority Children's Services, ILACS. I'd been in the borough for about a year at that point as the statutory director, and Joanne had only been here for, I think, three or 4 months, so a short period of time. But we'd undertaken a huge amount of work to get a really good sense of where we thought we were, so our baseline position. And we also looked at the position that we'd been in when Ofsted last undertook a full inspection, which was back in 2019, when the actual outcome was that the local authorities' children's services required improvement to its services, and that was the starting point. So there was a whole host of work and activity that took place. We did some external reviewing and benchmarking of where we thought our services were. We were learning from complaints, from our auditing, etc. And we were really driving and shifting our level of expectation in terms of where we thought the practice needed to be pitched. And we also were undertaking significant learning that was coming from engagement and co-production with our children and young people, and particularly with our young people who were leaving care, because they were the ones who'd experienced the service as it was back in 2019. So we wanted to learn from their respective experiences. So the report that you have in front of you today gives a summary of where we were, where we got to, and the focus as has been over the past year. So I think I'll just stop there. And the final thing I will say before I hand over to Joanne, the two documents that you have in front of you today, so the Ofsted progress update and the Children's Social Care self-evaluation are linked. They're linked documents. These are documents which we have shared with the regulator, along with an action plan to develop the service. We just so happen to have had our annual engagement meeting with the regulator this morning. So we had some colleagues from Ofsted join us to examine our progress and also look at the self-evaluation and our plans for the year ahead. And they've been very positive about where we are directing the service in terms of our priorities moving forward. So that was a really positive interaction today. But I'll let Joanne now just talk through where we'd got to very briefly, but really focusing on that progress update is probably the key thing, because we have had, obviously, the Ofsted report came here previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. So just taking a look at the SEF, which you've had, this details the progress made in children's services since the inspection finished in May last year, and the report was published for that inspection in July and was made public at that time. So what this does is it brings into the present day where we think we're at now, based upon the evidence that we've looked at across the last 12 months. So within this 24-25 financial year, and using our data and using, as Robert described, feedback, and looking at the areas that we know we've improved upon, we've recalibrated the achievements in the self-evaluation, but we've also recalibrated the priorities to move forward with in 25 and 26. So if there are any questions, if people want to ask questions based upon the self-evaluation, there's a lot of information in there, and it's sectioned out into the different areas where we would receive graded judgments. So the contents follow the graded judgments that we would be inspected upon by Ofsted. So the quality and impact of social work practice, experience and progress of children in need of help and protection, experience and progress of children in care, and the experience of progress of care leavers. Yeah, so thinking about the help and protection, the update report that you've received together with the SEF takes us through the specific graded area of help and protection, because when we had our inspection last year, all areas were graded good apart from the area of help and protection. And there were different elements of practice in the inspection that were highlighted to us as areas where we needed to improve. So thinking about what's changed since the inspection and what's moved forward, we've seen a lot of progress made against the recommendations, which is encouraging, and we're having a measurable impact upon families. But what we've established is really clear foundations, so a whole service set of learning, training, establishing key tools for managers took place as the inspection was completed. So before inspectors finished up their work here with us, we'd already started to look at our response to risk and concern for children and how we grade that risk and how we operate as a multi-agency partnership to safeguard children through the course of our strategy readings and our child protection investigations. So that was the first priority area that we looked at, to strengthen the practice and the participation of our partner agencies in that process. And that has had, through quality assurance work and looking back through the process of audits and things like that, we can see that steps have moved forward in terms of consistency. We're also seeing more consistency in our areas of application of threshold of needs. So we have a threshold of needs document, which is a partnership owned document, and all of our partners contribute, and that is used across the safeguard and partnership to understand levels of need and subsequent levels of risk associated for certain situations that children find themselves in. So those are two key areas where we've built strength in the last year, and we think that we've taken steps forward and shown distance travelled from where we were at when inspectors came last year. In terms of our numbers, the establishment of the assessment unit was something that we decided to put in place as on a pilot basis. And the assessment unit is a group of, well, 5 small groups of social workers operating on a duty system. So they rotate 1 week in 5 on duty. And what we found is the timeliness to respond to concerns and risk for children is improved, because we have the teams on duty every week waiting to respond to referrals of concern, high risk for children. We're able to respond rapidly to those situations. And we're wanting to establish the assessment unit permanently within the workforce, because we see not only the timeliness is improving, the consistency is improving, but also the families that are helped and move on from the assessment unit. They would move into either early help services or universal services, and some families require long-term intervention from social work services. Well, what we've seen happen is a stabilization in the workload and the volumes moving through. So we are happy to say that this move and establishing the assessment unit has had a positive impact in terms of the system and the capability within that system to serve families and provide them with the social work services that they need. What we can see is not only of we call them caseloads, groups of families that are allocated to social workers. The caseloads have become very manageable in our long-term service areas. At the time this report was written, average children per worker was 14. So it's increased by 1 to 15 now, but that's considered very manageable. And we're happy with that. And workers report that they're happy with that, and they find the volumes of work manageable as well. We found that having manageable caseloads means that people can spend time with the families and spend time with the children. And we have found that in many examples of work that's been undertaken with families, that families have successfully reduced risk and increased safety, working together with the services and the social workers that are in their life. And what we've seen is our rate of re-referrals, where families are referred back into the system, that's remained very stable, and it's low in comparison with, it's on par with, in comparison with statistical neighbours and the national average for re-referrals. So we know that families are not coming back to us. We haven't seen a trend upwards. We've seen things remain stable, which is good. Our child protection numbers, if you look at the report, you will see 2 graphs in the report. One of them shows you the trajectory of children in care, and one of them shows you the trajectory of child protection plans. So the vision that we have for practice, and that's mapped out in the national guidance, is that we want to try and keep families together. So we want to, if there are problems that families are facing and there's risk to children in their homes, in their family unit, we want to work with the families to try and reduce that risk using their extended family network and using the community in which they live, friends, neighbours, whoever's a positive influence in their network. And the measures around that are to look at numbers of children that enter into care, because what we're trying to do is avoid the need for children to come into care, try to find a way to overcome the problems that families face. So we look at our numbers and we look at how many children do we have in our care in Ealing, and is that the permanent plan for the children? And as the practice has evolved and the assessment pilot has taken flight and embedded, and the caseloads have become manageable in the service, we've gradually seen our practice start to influence this statistic. So we've seen our numbers of children in care coming down, and they've remained at a certain level to around the 280 mark. You can see it in the numbers. But what that means is we are working to keep children within their families. We still bring children into care who really need to come into care when they're not safe. but we don't have that high number anymore. And so the practice is leading to families being helped, children remaining within their family networks. And the decrease that we saw last year was related to court proceedings coming to an end and outcomes for children in that process being that they end up permanently living with family members and not looked after by Ealing, as well as young people who become 18 and are no longer counted as children in the numbers. So that explains some of the progress that we've seen. We've also seen children coming off child protection plans. So if you look at child protection numbers, we have seen this go up and down, and we do expect it will go up and down. This area is dependent upon need within the communities that we serve, and particular challenges families may face. But we have seen a gradual decrease since July 2024 of children subject of child protection plans, which is another measure that we watch to see if that is successful in terms of our interventions, reducing risk and increasing safety for families. Again, we would look at the numbers of children who have repeat child protection plans to see if families are coming back to us and risk is going back up. And our numbers in that area remain consistent and on par with our statistical neighbours and the national average. So we're not seeing a spike there either in terms of families coming back onto plans. So it is a positive picture in terms of the practice, the vision and the practice approach to try and work together with families and reduce the need for children to come into care. That's a positive picture.
Thank you so much. Anyone with a question? Councillor Crawford.
It's me again. Sounds like some really good work. I was on the looked after children's group, and I could see some really co-production working, excellent work being done. Now, what I think in all this and what you're saying, I'm really interested in knowing what you've done that's really different to hear the child, the voice of the child, of all ages, because it's my understanding, what I've learned over the years is that children are incredibly loyal to their parents, or that they won't tell the truth of how they got injuries or whatever. So have you? So it's the reporting. And also the cultural issue where parents, sometimes one parent might have a stronger say over another parent, and getting their voice heard. So I'd just be interested in knowing, I mean, it all sounds really good, but I suppose really I just want something tangible. And the SENCOs, the teachers, the SENCOs, has there been further training for them to just pick up things? No matter, if they've seen something, then there's a bit of monitoring and which all adds to a preventative work, and can be addressed fairly quickly. But well done. It looks like you've done some good work.
Do you want to come in?
Thank you. So I think there's still work to do. There's still lots to do in terms of the approach and where we want to take this. And I think in the SEF, you'll see reference to launching a Safe in Schools initiative, which talks about lead practitioners being attached to clusters of schools. And the purpose of that is to provide advice, guidance to the designated safeguarding leads that exist in each school on having teams around the families and recognising signs of risk and need for children. So we still recognise there's a lot more that we can do. There's a lot more that we can do, and we take it in stages. But some of this is about the way that we operate as professionals and the way that we use the skills and the knowledge and the techniques when doing work with children and families to really try and get to the nub of what the problem is, to then try and think about the solution to the problem, because the solution to the problem is not always taking a family into court or taking a child into care. Yeah, so it is kind of like a shift in the thinking to be more curious and ask more questions and involve the partnership more in the thinking. So thinking as a multi-agency, not just we're social care and these are our processes and therefore we think that, so we must do that. It's no longer as linear as it might have been before in terms of our approach to the work. That makes sense.
Question, and I would hope that it's also the partnership in the training, working with schools, with the SENCOs, because any adjustment could help. It's making people, you know, those people in the school sort of aware of the wider aspect, and sometimes what they see, it is really important to report and share that information.
So, yeah, I think these are really important questions, and just to endorse what Joanne was just saying about the way that we work that practice, I think the child's voice is central to that work, and we commissioned over a year ago now an approach called MOMO, which is Mind of My Own, and this is a tool that we can use with children. You can get this app onto a phone or to a tablet, or you can just print it off as a practitioner, and there's a range of techniques involved with this approach that enables practitioners to engage with children, even very young children actually, to ascertain how they're feeling, even about simple things which may then stoke other thoughts. We're really following an approach which is about pursuing safe uncertainty as opposed to safe certainty. They're very different things. So what we don't want to do is take agency from individual families. It's really important that we do not remove that agency, that we work with the family through respect, through empathy, through challenge as well, but built on strong relationships. And if we, as Joanna said, if we need to act with more control measures, we understand our powers and we'll work with partners to do that, but that's a last resort. So those relational aspects are really important. And I think what we've seen, and in fact what the regulator saw when they were present, was that we introduced a form of recording on the files, which is focused on looking at circumstances and looking at incidents that take place, and the social workers are trained to write their reports, to write their contact notes in a way that represents the child's perspective. So they write to the child to say this happened, because we know that for many children when they reach their majority, they'll go back, they'll make a request to see their file. And it's really important to demonstrate to the children that how we behave and acted. But I think in turn, it makes the professionals involved in the case really constantly think about how is the child feeling? This incident happened. This was reported to us by the police or housing services or whoever it is in the community. What was that experience like for this little one or for this teenager, as opposed to just tick boxing? It's more about that experience. And just a final point to respond to the question around the training. There is an extensive amount of training through the Safeguarding Partnership for practitioners, including SENCOs, but also through the Education Learning Partnership. We probably have one of the strongest education learning partnerships in the country. It's highly regarded, and it has a subgroup which focuses on safeguarding, includes training for professionals across schools, and the vast majority of our schools in Ealing are signed up.
Thank you. We have Councillor Kwanzaa who has a question online. Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. It's good to see the improvements that are taking place and the impact of kinship work in this report. So I'm very interested also, let's say in relation to the Race Equality Commission, a breakdown of, say, like figures in terms of backgrounds of the children. I know it's good that there was more work around empowering young people to have voices. I see on the corporate committee, corporate parent committee group that Kate is also involved in, we have seen the impact of how many of our youngsters now are getting housed. You know, they're also empowered to speak. We've seen it directly in the last few months, but I'm very interested in that we're talking generically, but what about the breakdown of young people as represented in terms of children of African Caribbean heritage, especially in relation to, say, kinship work, that there's this whole emphasis around community building, you know, voices represented within families. What is there a breakdown that you can speak to? I'm very interested in that. I hope I'm making sense.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Come in?
Okay.
Okay,
thank you, Councillor. Just in terms of there's a few things in what you've asked of us. I think if I'm to start with some of the numbers, and then we'll take it from there, and I can talk to you about the kinship outcomes for children. So
thank you.
If we look at our numbers of looked after children as of today, we have 279 children looked after. Yeah. And if we look at the ethnicity of the children, what I can tell you about that 279 group is, and I'm using the terms, the categorical terms in the data report. So this is not the DFE data. Yeah. So 31% of the 279 are white children, 25% mixed, as described by the DFE, 22% black, 18% Asian, and we have other 5%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that gives you a sense of the ethnicity of the children that we're caring for.
Yes.
In kinship care, we have short-term and long-term kinship care. So some children may be living with family members but going through a court process and have not yet reached their permanence. But then you'll have other children who have reached their permanence, and altogether we have 47 children in kinship care.
Mhm.
And the rest of the children are either living in foster care, either in-house or independent foster carers, or children's homes,
Yeah.
and different types of placement. We might have semi-independent placements for older children.
Right.
So that kind of gives you a flavour. Now, in the SEF, you will see in the forward, Robert's forward, that we talk about one of the huge achievements. We see it as a huge achievement is our kinship is moving forward. So we have more children who are reaching permanence with their family members or even returning home. So there were many more children that reached permanence in that way in 24-25 than there were on the previous year. And our numbers who have permanence outcomes of special guardianship orders have risen in 24-25 compared with the figure for 23-24. So we're very much looking at our kinship assessment arrangements and the diversity of our team who undertake the assessments. We have a nice and a good diverse group of social workers that do those. What's happened is with the increase in focus on family members and identifying more connected people to children within their network, we've seen a demand increase for kinship assessments. And so moving forward, the priority is to look at the resourcing in that area and make sure that we have enough capacity in that area to respond to the demand as we push this forward even further. Otherwise, we have delays in the assessments being completed due to the level of demand. Our family group conference service, we moved it further up to the earlier part of the service. So in October last year, where our family group conference service used to sit in the long-term part of the service, and we moved it to align with the assessment unit, so that when families come into the system and receiving an assessment from a social worker, they have the opportunity to access a family group conference for their network to come together with an independent facilitator to help the family identify people and identify resource within their own network. And I think if we do that earlier on in the journey of the family and the system, it will identify resource much earlier on before things escalate and become high risk. And we're seeing our family group conference service go out into communities and give talks to community groups, and they're currently very active in that space. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of excellent points there. Investment is key, resources, getting out there, outreach, early intervention. It's all vital, and I commend the work that you're doing. And this is something that has been necessary for many, many years. And it's good to see a shift towards that direction. Speaking as somebody who has been privately fostered in her youth and can see the value of, you know, just working with families in their, you know, sort of as much as possible with their voices. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Robert, you want to come in?
Yeah, I'll just make a brief comment just to say, as well, as you could hear from the numbers that Joanne referenced, we know that we have an overrepresentation of particular groups from within our communities in care, exclusions as well. Councillors will know that's we're doing some specific work around education with the Citizens Tribunal. We're doing some really focused work in trying to reach underserved communities, and this is a point that I think we feel very passionately about, is that we need to reach those communities. You'll hear in terms of Black Caribbean children, for instance, significant overrepresentation in care when compared with the population as a whole. There's various factors there, but what we do know about that group as well, that we are not seeing the same representation in some of our preventative services, for instance, in some of the early help work or children's centres, and that is why we're developing some plans for more focused outreach for particular communities where we may have particular risk indicators, and working with colleagues in health in particular to try to identify those children much earlier, working with midwifery teams and also health visiting teams. It's really important, and developing that trust. These are not developments that can be landed overnight. This is about working with communities consistently, building levels of trust, because I think within some communities, there is a fear factor that if they work and engage with the local authority, their children will be removed and be brought into care. And so developing that trust is vital. And it's important that as the lead officers in this area, Joanne and I drive this forward now, but whoever is here after me, after Joanne, it's really important, I think, that as a local authority, we ensure that we hold the tiller, so we continue that direction of engagement and building trust. So I think we're on the right line there, but we have to keep going. It's not about the one-offs.
And can I just finally say, you hit on the point, Robert, it's also about working holistically. You made the links between, health and children's services. It's across the board. That's what we learnt about the Race Equality Commission. There are so many priorities and groups that have been underserved in education. We think about what Park are doing in terms of parent forums. If certain organisations are resistant, it doesn't work. So there has to be this holistic approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Oxley.
Yeah, but first of all, I wanted to thank you for the papers. They're very good. And obviously the self-evaluation, I can see an awful lot of work has gone into that. That's a hefty document. I just, because I'm new to some of the data, I just had some questions about data just to follow up. It's actually related to your last answer about overrepresentation of children, looked after children. Actually, the ethnicity breakdown is actually very interesting, but it mentions 31% are white. So when you said overrepresentation, when I look in the actual the document, the self-assessment, it says that, I think it's talking about school pupils. It's saying that school pupils in Ealing, 87% are non-white. Am I reading that correctly? Because that would suggest it's white people who are overrepresented as children, looked after children. And if that's the case, I just wondered what you thought the reason for that was.
So there's some overrepresentation in different groups. Whether that's sustained or not is a different matter, and there'll be different reasons in terms of the age ranges. So where particular children are and with them coming into care. But what we know about Black Caribbean children in particular, it's a sustained period of overrepresentation, much higher than their position in the population. We know that some children are more likely to return home rather than others as well. So I think we're not looking at one group alone necessarily, but we're trying to piece it together. So it's about children in care, it's children who are more likely to be excluded from school as well. It's children who are more likely to receive some type of warning via the criminal justice system. It's a range of factors that we piece together. but it is a live document that we keep under review. The other side to it, though, Councillor, is that we also know that children who are registered within our early help settings, there is again a lower number from Black Caribbean households. So it's two sides of a coin to get a full understanding.
So I understand the point about Black Caribbeans, and I think you're spot on with that. I'm just interested in the white 31% of white kids being in the CLA, and when and just why that's the case when they appear to be of the school population, only 13%. And just wondered what we're doing around that particular ethnic group.
Well, what we're doing around that group is some general work that we're doing, as Joanne just spoke about earlier, that we're doing much more earlier intervention with all of those households. We're doing more what we call reunification work specifically. So looking at family members, but looking at more broadly, so including friendship groups and networks as well, and then doing some specific work with individual children, their schools, etc. And that's the way that we're working on that. I think the data that we have here, just to be clear, and I think Joanne referenced this for a reason earlier, this is the DFE data. We look at some of this data slightly differently on occasion, so we'll start breaking down a Black cohort, looking at Black African communities, Black Caribbean, and indeed with a white cohort, we'll also look at ethnic breakdown within those communities. So we know that there are certain Central European and Eastern European communities that might be overrepresented in those groups, as will Roma children. So again, we'd have to break that down and give you a bit more detail on the finer detail of that. Some of what we're reporting here is the simple DFE reporting, and we're not able to actually report that in any different way because that goes directly to government. That's the way in which they collect the data, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I have a question. Do you have a question? No. You go first then.
I don't have any question, to be honest. When I read this report with great interest, brilliantly written, and while I was reading the report, I was thinking about the questions, but I found my answers in the report. Well written. I commend this report. Thank you very much and commend your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. My question is just to go back a little bit basic in the terms of help and protection the children in terms of signposting. What I would like to know is, so we identified a family are in need. We sorted that out. Talk me through from how then do we signpost what support step by step that family goes through in our services. What does that look like? And when I say that, what I'm really trying to understand is on the report on page 41, we know that our children in care, they're not made aware of support and services that are available to them. So it says here the service is undeveloped in terms of assessments, and there's maybe lack of understanding of young carers' experiences. And also for minority of the children, some meetings, the strategy meetings have not been as effectively to plan immediate steps in order to improve the section 47, which requires. So I just want us to go back to the services that we know the family, they need help, but the services that we give out in terms of signposting, caseload, accountability, assessments, and follow-up. If you could, one of you could highlight for me and go through that, that'd be really nice.
Okay, thank you. There's different sections to it, so I'll try to deal with section by section. So at the point of entry at the front, call it the front door of the service, yep. There's a triage of risk and need that happens in what's called the multi-agency safeguarding hub. That's right at the front door. They look at everything coming through and will start to understand, talking to the referrers, they'll want to understand what are the worries, what are the things that you're seeing, what's the evidence, and then they will form a view about the level of risk and need, and then working together with the early help service. So early help coordinators, there are a range of professionals involved in that first stage of understanding risk and need. Working together with early help professionals, they can look at, right, okay, based upon what we've learned about this family, these children, we know, according to where they live, their address, we know in that particular of the 7 towns, there are this set of services available. And Ealing is a large borough, so it's considered one of the larger boroughs with more children living there. So it's really important that we're working together with our early help colleagues, our health colleagues, our police colleagues, and our voluntary sector to think about what is local for families when they have emerging needs and risks associated with that. So we work closely together with other people is the message. Depending on where the family live in the borough will lead us to the follow-on services that they receive. And there are some brilliant services in Ealing. Ealing is well resourced across the 7 towns to be able to tap into things. And what we want to do is really look at the family information service role. So every borough will have a family information service manager who is tapped into what's available for families and children across the borough. So they are a fountain of knowledge and a go-to resource that we can use. And I think we can develop that role more in Ealing to help us get families into services quickly. With the interventions, so we talked about the practice model. If a family requires an assessment, it's a child and family assessment, and the local protocol is that we complete that assessment within a 45-day period. So the social workers are out undertaking their work with the family, talking to the partner agencies involved with the family, and understanding what life is like at that particular snapshot in time. And through the course of conversations with the parents and with the children, the emerging picture and level of need will become clearer as the assessment goes on. And again, working with local services, understanding the levels of risk that will influence the type of service that we would want to put in for a family. So for example, in a domestic abuse case, for example, where somebody's experiencing abuse and that is of high risk, we would be looking to those specific specialist services to support the families in the borough. It could be issues of neglect, so that we'd be looking at the services available to support with understanding neglect and helping parents to make changes in the way that they look after their children where there's concerns of neglect. And we have parenting courses that are available, a really good parenting course offer. We have family practitioners that are not qualified social workers but skilled in working directly with families, and we can tap into them, these roles, to support us with having the conversation about reducing risk, increasing safety and creating change. We can have parenting programs, family practitioners and local voluntary community sector services coming on board. A really good one is the Circle Cafe. I don't know if you've heard of the Circle Cafe. So what we're trying to do is that's one that comes to mind, because they've recently put on an open day and we've had people going down there to see what's happening there and what services they provide. But we're trying to get officers out to visit places where we know there's good work going on for children and families, and we invite people in as well. So we've had Home Start come in, and a few different other voluntary sector community organisations to really start driving the awareness of what is out there. And then piece by piece, we'll have good examples of practice where we've really utilised that range of resources around a family with good outcomes. We have a really good youth offer as well. So the youth service has centres that they're delivering youth services out of, good ones. And so we want to utilise the youth centres and the services that are delivered there as well for the older young people.
Just had are you finished with that?
With
Yeah.
the interventions I am, and then as you go through, we might look at particular pieces of intervention work that form part of a court programme of work. So that might be specialist parenting assessments that we have to then commission in to support families.
I have a follow-up question. So based on the interventions, this is what I was getting at, and also accountability, and looking at the report here, then how do we this is around our staffing. So the staffs and the team that are working with that particular family that's holding that caseload, then who's taking accountability to make sure that family are supported through that process? How then are we overlooking caseloads? For example, what I'm trying to say is, let's say I am that specific, been assigned to, for example, let's say 150 families, maybe that is not that high, but let's just say that number. Then I've got a caseload to look after and make sure that these families are supported. Then who's looking at my caseload to make sure that as a team, that I know I have to get my job done, but who's taking accountability to make sure these families, that we're reducing the risk, we're making sure that there's no more need, we're offering support. And you talked about we have 45 days to make sure that we clear the family in terms of support. And if there's an urgent support, then we take it further. Then who's accountable for that and who oversees, and how many times do they meet on a weekly basis to make sure that family are really do look after, and we are constantly doing our follow-ups?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I've described the intake assessment unit. I'll use that as an example. So the workers coming off duty, the management infrastructure around the assessment unit has team managers overseeing groups of 5 workers. So that's manageable per group. Then you have a service manager is the next line of accountability up, and then you have the head of service. So all of those management levels have accountability for ensuring that the frontline workers who are going out to meet with children and families are asking the right questions, using their practice model approach to be curious and look beyond the situation and really get to the nub of the problem, doing their checks through line management supervision. So we have expectations within the organisation that every single worker will have regular one-to-ones with their line managers to look at their work with the children and families. We have audit work that's undertaken. At every point of transfer, the records are checked, and families will not transfer to another team without their records being checked. And a panel has been set up. It's literally sitting for the first time in July. It's a transfer panel where scrutiny of the records is undertaken prior to any child being discussed at the transfer panel. So there are certain checkpoints throughout the process where managers can pick up on things that may not be done for families and things that may have been overlooked. And the style again is supportive style, but it's high challenge too. So always thinking about the experience of the child and making sure that direct work has been undertaken and the child's voice is coming through in terms of understanding their experience. And that's an expectation of supervision. All the managers are trained in supervision and how we want that to be delivered. So we do need to continue on that trajectory, continuing to train our managers, and it remains one of our priority areas in terms of practice.
Thank you. And last question, sorry I keep going on about this. So on like I said, page 41, here it says the service underdeveloped. I understood that. It also says the assessment varied in quality. Can you just explain a little bit more? What does it mean? What does that mean to us in terms of assessment?
Can I just come in on that point?
Please.
So page 41 and what's contained there is as the service was assessed to be back in May.
20, okay.
Yeah, just to be
Okay.
not May just on the May 2024.
24, wasn't it? That's why.
Yeah.
But now that has improved.
Yes, so
Okay.
that's where we're seeing the improvements from that element. I don't know. Do you want to say anything about the detail there, Joanne?
Can I come in?
Yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, thank you. So what you see in those bullet points is lifted from the Ofsted report, and the point that you make about the assessment, it's in relation to a certain group of children, young carers. So what the inspectors looked at when they came was our service to young carers. They wanted to know, how do you work with young, how do you identify young carers, because they can be a hidden group of children. How do you raise awareness about young carers? And when you have young carers who you've identified, how do you assess their needs and what service do you provide for them? And they found that that was an area where we really needed to look at that and develop that. And across the service between children's and adults, there are many workshops that have happened to take forward an all-age carers strategy. It's not finished yet, it's not launched yet, but carers can be of all ages, and so they've looked at the work that was already underway to devise a strategy for carers and included young carers within that definition. So the work is moving forward, I think. I hope that explains.
It does. Thank you so much. Councillor Oxley, you had a question?
Great.
Oh, Councillor Crawford, do you want to go first?
Less of a question. I think it might be actually a bit of a request, because one of the things which I think when Councillor Haley went through her question, I'm struck by how I'm not sure I completely understand how it works. I mean, it sounds good, and I have confidence in the way you're saying it, but I think I would find it useful to understand a bit more, almost through a picture of how the process works for families and the steps they go through and where the resources are, because you're referring to safeguarding teams and front office teams, and I have to confess I get lost in it. I suppose one of the if I had, so I guess I have two. One is a sort of a technical question, but I would have a request. Maybe, I don't know if it's a site visit or whether it's just possible to come and present things in a more pictorial process way, how it works. I personally, I don't know about other members of this panel, would find that really, really helpful. And then I just had a second thing. I think what I take from the paper, sort of when I stand back from it, is that we've been able to improve things partly because we've got a grip of the caseload, and that makes sense to me. It's intuitively got to be right that you can address the Ofsted issues when you've got a smaller, more manageable caseload. Just in terms of what those numbers mean, it talks about in para 14 caseloads, I think, of full. I should put my glasses on. I could read my own notes then. 14 children per something. I'm not sure what that person is, but what the numerator is. But the denominator, I assume there, is that across CLA and people with protection plans? That 14? And that's first question. And secondly, what was the 14 at the time of the ILAC? Because that, I think the 14 in paragraph 14 is referring to sort of currently.
So in terms of the first initial suggestion or question, that's actually something which Councillor Haley and I and other members of the committee had already discussed, and we do think that site visits, as you put it, are a great idea to see how the teams are working, to spend time with the social workers and talk to them, because we actually really value our social workers and our staff engaging with elected members, but just other senior people across the council and partnership, because I think it's really important that they hear about the value that people place on the work that they're undertaking, not just their managers. And that's why we also have a moderation process in that. So we really do welcome that. And then in terms of the second set of questions, I'll hand back to Joanne.
Yeah, that was about the numbers, wasn't it? The numbers?
Yeah, the caseload numbers, what they were at the time of the ILAC, and also what the nature and what the numbers actually means.
Yeah, so the number is an average number across all of our qualified social workers who sit within the long-term service. So that's the safeguarding area. So you have your assessment unit at the beginning, then you have your safeguarding service of teams working with children in need or children subject of child protection plans. They're also holding a small number of children in care who we hope can go back home, and we're working with the families in that way. So that middle, I call it the middle section of the service, because after the safeguarding service would come the children in care service and leave-in care. So the middle section of the service holds the majority of our numbers of children in the system. We do have high leave-in care numbers that come in behind the number of children that we've got in that middle section of the service. And so that is the section where we're really trying to intervene with the families and support them through a process of change. Now, sometimes that can be a short time frame within which workers are working with families, and the response is quick and the risk comes down, the safety goes up, and the families don't need us in their life anymore. But then for some other families, it can be a longer term time frame for change, dependent upon other things, and it just depends upon the levels of need and the factors at play within the family at that point in time. So we look at that area because it's a vulnerable area in terms of the volume of work and the allocations, because once a family enter that middle section of the service, we have some families that may be subject of plans for up to 2 years. So they can be there for a long time. Now, the average number, as I explained at the time of this report, was 14 children per worker. It's now risen slightly by 1 to 15 children per worker. Before we established the assessment unit in April 2024, and families there was no assessment unit, so families would come through our front door, be triaged in terms of understanding their risk and need, and all of the high risk situations would come straight over into the long-term safeguarding service. And what we found was that was an unpredictable structure to manage the demand, because at times of high demand, families would come over and come straight into the long-term side of the service. But you'd also have those urgent situations that needed to be responded to coming into teams with workers that already had families they were working with on a long-term basis. So the system was becoming saturated, and then the numbers would go down, and then it would become saturated again. And there'd been a few cycles of that in Ealing before we established the assessment unit. And the average number of children could be anything up to 19, 20 per worker at times. And that's too high. That's considered elevated from Ofsted. So we're below where we want to be, which is a good thing.
Thank you for that. That's helpful.
And just to say, and sometimes in those situations, they may even spike a bit more for our more experienced staff, because we were, as we recruit new staff, they have protected caseloads. So that could be then quite tricky to manage. So I think in terms of the structure that Joanne quickly then introduced, it was very successful, and it's very much aided our retention rates as well. So I think that's been a real positive for the families, but a positive for the work experience that people have on the ground. And the final point I just wanted to make on that area is that we work with our London fellow local authorities. So there's obviously 32 of us in the City of London. We all share our data as part of the London Innovation and Improvement Alliance. So we can see the caseloads, the children's caseloads of all local authorities across London. And we are in the median to lower level in terms of where our caseloads are currently pitched, and we want to keep them there because it's good on the practice side, but also it's really important in terms of that sustaining our workforce, because one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest issues in terms of the feedback we receive from children and families is real sadness and disappointment when we see turnover of social workers. So it's really important that we've got that stability in that space, and we're there. But Joanne and I are very greedy. We want more, and that's why we want, in terms of where we're looking for the new structure, obviously we have been actually, Joanne's been doing a lot of work in terms of engaging with our workforce, because we need to get it right for them so that we get it consistently right going forward for all of our children, because it's great that we're seeing so many of our children have these great experiences and improvements, but where we've got one or two that we don't get it right for, that's their life going forward, isn't it? And we have to get it right for everyone, giving them that chance. So we're looking very closely at where London is and where the highest performers are as well. So we're comparing ourselves with those high performers, and we like to bring third parties in to have a look at what we're doing and give us some pointers.
Thank you. Just a quick question. While we're on, so for example, if family wants to do their own self-referral, is that directly through a phone, or they can just show up and speak to an officer immediately, or is that through a phone referral if they want to do self-referral?
They would need to phone or fill in some information with that detail, but if they phone, they can make an appointment as well.
If they're not able to do that, what other options do they have if they're not able to make a call, for example, due to language barrier or due to access to the system?
So the phone
a phone or anything? How can the family refer them then?
We work with obviously with interpreters, so we have a range of services where we use interpretation. We've got significant material where we also have material which is in a range of languages that people can access services. But for many families, when they initially present, they may well present at a lower level, and then suddenly in their explanation, the matter increases in the level of need. So we'll get presentations often at school, is early year providers, police, and health. So most of the actual presentations, there will be a third party, and because oftentimes when there is some type of quote disclosure of an issue or a challenge, it's a third party who is supporting that work, and that's why Joanne placed an emphasis on the training across the partnership and the work that we've been doing with the Children's Safeguarding Partnership. Those staff, across health, police, and other partners are crucial in terms of working with us. We can't do it on our own, as it were, but there are plans afoot as well, looking at the Connected Communities agenda to think about how we actually go into other spaces as well, and work sensitively in those spaces, because, for instance, when it comes to safeguarding, we need to get into a place where the whole community understands that safeguarding is their business to look at. If there's a child that sees distress, if there's a family where there's an issue, they do think about how they might get involved in an appropriate way. And I'll just give you one quick example. I remember a few months ago, I was, getting a sandwich across the road from here, from this office. There was a child who seemed distressed, and the shopkeeper had actually come out to engage with that child, and was able to actually seem to know the child's mother, and was able to call someone. Mother came over and they were able to have a discussion, and because I was thinking, oh, maybe I need to get involved here and just do some practical social work. But I saw the matter almost resolving itself, and this individual actually providing some support to the child, but then support to the mother when she arrived, and seemed to just help them both out, and that was something that was really positive, and you could see it could have turned in a slightly different way, and that was just about real care of the community for the community. It's not straightforward, because the work that we do and some of the presentations will be much more complex, but there are many trusted individuals within communities where we probably got to rebalanced a little bit more in terms of some of the messaging, in terms of how we support each other in our communities. And again, these are not short-term initiatives. This is a longer-term initiative about growing trust, opening up communities that more people know each other, they converse, they build a knowledge of each other, so that they can then develop those relationships and actually participate together. Because the programs that Joanne was referencing before, we have some programs for parenting, and the ones that we found are the most successful are often the ones which are led by parents. So they're actually talking about their own lived experience and their problem of managing or supporting their teenage child when they may have been acting out a little in a normal way. If you have a professional going through dot by dot, this is how we do this work, that's one thing, and it can be successful. But I've often just seen the reports coming through that where we empower parents, to actually lead in these areas, other parents are inspired and they've got that sense of belief as well. So it's really positive.
Thank you so much. Councillor Dear, did you say you had a question?
We do. We know across the so my colleague's sharing with me the exact number of social workers that we have. We have a total number of 313 social workers across services, of whom 57 are agency social workers. I mean, that actually is positive when you look across the London position. We actually share data in respect of that for London as well. We worked with other colleagues across London to introduce a process by which agency staff can't just move from one borough to another. So we put, you know, a time span on that. They'd have to go and move into another authority outside of London, and that has really slowed down some of that turnover, so it's been quite positive. We know that the government is looking at this matter as part of the children's wellbeing bill at the moment that they are looking to introduce. Sorry, that they have introduced, but they, you know, is going through its stages of reading, so that they are looking at how they might be able to manage that further. But from our position, we're really focusing on how we can grow more of our own staff. We've been very successful in the numbers of ASYEs. They're also newly qualified social workers, and we currently have 23 of those social workers in the system. Thank you, Joanne.
Councillor Crawford.
Enter who uses it, where is it, and how is it funded, and can it be replicated wherever it is? Can it be replicated if it's not in Acton? I would like to look at something in Acton. So
yeah, I mean, I can give you the brief information. So the Circle Cafe is an organisation. It's a very flexible, welcoming environment that's focused in on providing emotional and mental health support for young people. But it's a place where you can go, you can spend time there, it's comfortable, it's you know, got comfortable furniture in there, and it's got trained professionals in there who will welcome in young people, have conversations with them, and encourage them to talk about their emotional and mental health. That's not the first topic of conversation. It's a welcoming environment for young people with trained people in there to support young people with whatever it is they want to talk about. It's not a youth service. It's focused in on well-being and emotional mental health of young people. And it's a community-based service. They run some groups in there. They have activities going on in the Circle Cafe, and young people can just head down there and drop in any time. I don't know the actual address.
Councillor, we took a visit in the panel before. Is in right near South Ealing Station, and they work with the mind as well, and they got a beautiful therapy room. I absolutely love their therapy room. They got books so children can come in if they feel like they're at risk of any issue and concern. When we took a visit there, I asked that similar question, and they said children over 5 years old can actually go there. And I've met some children there myself, so at the age of 14, 15, 20, 21. I don't know if they got up to 25, but I think it's from the age of 5 to 25, if not to 21. It's a really good, and it's really done well as well. So take a visit, Councillor Crawford, is nice.
It does interest me because I would be interested in doing something like that in Acton, because I've just got a new community room for carers and young carers, and making it like an Acton, a sitting room, and where people do feel welcome and can, you know, have the support, and your service can actually arrange, you know, to use it with specific groups. So yeah, if you can send me the details,
Yeah.
I will go and have a look to see what I can learn from it. Thank you very much.
Just wanted to note that the funding comes through the Young Ealing Foundation, and obviously they're linked to John Lyons as well. We do have regular meetings with both those organisations in terms of where they are thinking about investing. So that's something that we can always discuss with them, you know, in terms of investment which they are making across the borough to support young people.
Thank you. Cornelia, do you want to come in?
Oh, sorry.
No, I just wanted to say I had a question in the chat. Apparently they didn't hear your question, Councillor Cordia, which was about how many locum social workers we have. Yeah, so I've just said that for the benefit of the chat. Also, are we taking what has been said so far? Does that apply only to the self-evaluation report, or sorry, so many pages of the Ofsted inspection report? Is it? We've taken both. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they were both linked, weren't they? It was a mixture. They covered it, both reports.
Okay.
Yeah. Before we end the meeting, do we have any recommendation? Robert Staff, come in.
I'm not making a recommendation. I'm just flagging the site visit because I think that was something which was raised, which I think is fabulous, actually, really helpful. And I think there was, and then I think Joanne had stated that she would send Councillor Crawford some information on the cafe.
Thank you. Councillor Dear, did you had a recommendation you wanted to make, or no? That's the end of our meeting. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody.